Most poker players don't realize that the reason why they are stuck with low win rates is because they are making the same critical mistakes over and over again. After helping dozens of players crush low stakes, I noticed that these mistakes have to do something with being too nitty and passive. So in this video I will break down the game of one of my students to show you what it looks like, and I share advanced tips that you can use right away to play more aggressively, boost your win rate and move to high stakes ASAP. Let's jump into it. Okay, so let's start the footage. Let's see what we find today. Which kind of mistakes. First 2.598 gets close. Fold probably fine versus tighter player. There also, when you with the 9-8 offsuit, if you have post flop edge and you kind of know which kind of mistakes villain is doing, and that you have like a very good game plan as the big blind versus button, then you can expand your calling range exploitatively, or not exploitatively, based on you being able to realize more equity than you should by playing better than your opponent. The 2x open was fine because the button is tight with the 15b pip. Preferably we would like to look into the sets, so like how many hands there are. So if it's just 2 hands, we cannot look at the 15b pip. So if the button is tight, then we can open wider, and the big blind needs to be also quite tight. As soon as the button starts to 3-bet frequently and is not too tight, let's say, then we want to be careful how wide we open. Really depends a lot on how the button plays there. Check raise the 8s always. There's, like in theory, it's 100% check raise, and exploitatively there's not really a reason to deviate from it. The only exception would be if villain would be a super aggro guy who triple barrels off like way too much, so that we gain a lot of extra EV by slow playing. Normally not the case in NL25. With the majority of players, it's not the case. On the ace turn, it's a very interesting turn. Pretty bad turn for the big blind, because it takes away ace 3, ace 8 combos that we have. So it's taking away value combos that we are repping, and it's giving villain like this absolute strength hands. Like he has the advantage of ace king, ace queen. We should check raise some ace jack, ace 10 type hands on the flop, but most players anyway just miss this type of check raises. So yeah, I would imagine that the solver is checking here a lot. And 8s, or in practice, do we want to really check? I don't think so, because population will what they're doing. Like mostly they just step small on the turn, and then if you check raise, they overfold to the check raise because population is not check raise bluffing enough. So I think just keep barreling is the best way how to get value. And if we bet a turn, we need to go very polarized. We don't bet any ace jack anymore, ace 10 anymore. We go very low frequency, and when we bet very big, something like. The other thing is you don't want to fold out flush draws, so preferably I would choose a sizing where it still keeps some flush draws in, some better flush draws. So at least pot size, I would think, or like something like 28 big blinds. So I think he played it fine. And wide open with queen 3 suited. I would like to see here just a range bet. Yeah, like I really advocate for this range bet or range check strategy. as long as you're not very, very solid with that strategy, and you need to learn first with the simplified strategy how to think good in terms of ranges. Just make your life much easier. And people still play very poorly versus range bet and range check. Interesting, the 5-4 I don't like. First 2x I think we can just get away playing a lot as the button, because population is not squeezing enough. So for example, this ice guy, I cannot imagine that he gets the correct squeeze frequencies. Also maybe the big blind looks a bit looser, but anyway they will not squeeze enough, and the UTG, the population is under 4 betting. That makes me to 3 bet more often, or at least call. Also when we call or 3 bet out of position, the population is playing very poorly, so you over realize your equity. As soon he calls, or as soon villain calls or you call and it goes to the flop, are already you over realize your equity, because villain will play pretty poorly. So you want to play quite a lot of hands there in the button. Playing too tight from that from button, I see is a very common mistake from population. Queen 9 suited, it's interesting that he's not thinking about 3 betting. Queen 9 suited should be in the 3 bet sometimes, and exploitatively you can have it more frequent because they over fold to 3 bets. And they're under 4 bet. Normally you want to always have this mistakes what population is doing and kind of doing the opposite in their shoes. So if they under 3 bet the big blind, you want to over 3 bet too frequent, because it's perceived as very strong from the population. Ace check, let's see. I think this is also something that most players don't get correct, and this mistake is very frequent also in higher stakes. It's under 3 betting from imposition. So here he should find hands like ace jack, king jack, I think king 10. This type of hands should 4 bet to a certain frequency, and then we make a small 4 bet to like 23 big blinds. Most players just call the sense. Call on the flop, fine. I don't think we do much racing here on 10-6-5. In position in general, we don't do much racing. Especially versus smaller sizings when we need to protect this type of hands like ace jack, king jack, lower pockets. Because when you bet small, we need to defend a wider range by calling, and therefore we need more of our value hands, like for example your jacks, 10x. We need to have more in the calling range to protect the weaker part. Or like 2 pairs, I mean, sets also. It's interesting. Let's look at the timings. Check turn, fine. Sometimes bet also fine, so like doesn't matter too much. Probably exploitatively, just betting turn is not bad, because they overfold to when they check the turn. And also like river, they overfold, but you just get to bet more often the turn. If we check back the turn, you give him the opportunity to take away the pot on the river with his own, for example, king jack, or this type of hands, ace 5 or what he had. Tens, interesting. Yeah, this is kind of like the strategy that he uses his min raise on as the small blind and then range check, which I think is fine, but yeah, you just need to be a bit careful that players don't pick up on what you're doing. Yeah, river is a pretty clear overbet. I think we don't get here enough value. Also turn, I would just start overbetting. I don't know why we check the turn. It doesn't make much sense, you know. Huh? Oh, that's a big punt. That's a pretty big punt. Also, like blocking the turn. Here we can start code 4 betting. Also this type of hands like ace queen off. We want to do it more frequent than the population because population is too tight. Ace queen off here. When he goes 10.8, we can go very small, like 22 big blinds, 21 big blinds even, and put the small blind in a very, very big, like tricky spot. Yeah, the player likes to use the 2x sizing on as the small blind, which is fine. The population is overfolding versus it, and then he's playing a lot of checks on the flop. Turn I don't like at all. I don't know why we use a 1/3. We want to apply no pressure on the king x, so doesn't make much sense to go now for a block bet. And villain will turn now some jack 5, some 10-5 you block, but yeah, you get the point. It's just not a great sizing. Also, in position should start now to raise some hands more aggressively, and yeah, population is just playing too passive versus the bets. River I don't like again, so overbet turn and then river going very big. That's the best line, I think. We don't get nearly enough value out of our value range here, so it seems like that player is not able to play his value range correctly and then loses a lot of EV in the long run with this. Consistently sizing it too small, not getting the maximum in. And it's also a very common mistake in low stakes and also in mid stakes too. It's interesting. What is he really wrapping? Queen 9, he shouldn't have too much. So in theory, villain should check back some Queen 9, but really, like on 25 NL, they don't really do this. So 9-8 also is a very intuitive bet on the flop. So I would also highly discount this. This 9-8. He will have some, but also when you bet 1/3 on the turn, he's pretty inclined to raise sometimes 9-8, so probably comes to the river maybe with like 2-3 combos I would estimate. And then he has like a bunch of 2 pairs that he can still go for value here, because if you overbet and he raises, then he's not wrapping anymore jack 7, he's not wrapping anymore 10-7, 7-5, but when you go 3/4, it looks you look pretty heavily like ace king, aces, king queen type hands. So he can go for thin value here with 2 pairs. The question is, do we really want to shove? If we would be confident that villain doesn't have 9-8 and queen 9, then of course we just want to shove, and even if he overfolds doesn't matter. But the problem is if he has them too frequent, the 9-8, and he overfolds quite heavily versus the all-in, then we isolate ourselves versus the strong part. So we need to be very careful here what we are doing to be on the safe side, because I'm not 100% confident how many 9-8 he will play like this. Maybe he's very passive and he comes here to the river with 10 combos 9-8. Then it's terrible to shove, because population will overfold quite a lot here versus the all-in. Unless he's a fish and he overplays or overvalues his relative hand strength with 2 pairs, or a very weak rake, then anyway, yeah, we need to go all in. But here I would prefer just to call. Yeah, that's a huge punt. To fold is a very big punt. There can also be the thing of just looking at MDA data can be hurting you, because for example it can come now there in his mind that this line is under bluffed quite heavily in MDA, so therefore he wants to overfold, but then he doesn't he missed the effect of villain being able to go too thin for value here, or like thinner for value than he thinks, and then he's just the fact of him being good versus his value makes the stance like a very easy call. There's, I think, the mistake in his thinking. Yeah, I don't like the small open when there's a fish. I would like to size up. I could imagine that the fish has, that when you click on him, that there's like maybe few hands just. That's why he has 0 VPIP. He could be easily also like a 50 VPIP whale. So I would check the stats. Range bet, I like. In theory, not a thing. The overbet on the like with the 6, because you block the folding range quite heavily now. You've blocked the queen 6, 10-6, this type of hands. Like 6x is a very frequent fold on the turn for villain. It would only make sense exploitatively if villain is heavily overfolding versus the turn, but also, or even if he would play okay on the turn but heavily overfold with the river barrel, then this line also makes sense. So you can expand your barreling frequency versus a tight pool that overfolds to triple barrels. The nice thing with a 6 here is you block something like king 6, like this. There's few nutted combos that he check calls on the flop and then has a easy check call down versus 3 barrels. So theoretically not a thing, but exploitatively I like it. But now we need to find the barrel, of course. If he checks back now, then I don't like it. I'm just thinking about the sizing. The thing is, I want to rep ace king still. I want to rep king queen plus. Do I rep king queen plus with the sizing? Most likely not. So I would rather have a sizing where I put max pressure on the king x. So going for pot size, I think, is totally enough. Something where I still rep ace king, like I said, king queen plus, or even 3/4. I don't think it's needed here to overbet. And the 9 is an interesting card because you will get a decent amount of 2 pairs. So for example, he has very often like king 9 offsuit is a very frequent hand in his range of villain. And or for example, if let's say the river is a 5, yes, he doesn't have like king 5 off unless we open 2x. I don't, yeah, we open 2x. Then anyway, like king 5 off he should also have, but this is one of the hands that they overfold. So I want to think like how often does it river the 2 pair. Based on that, I know then how much my aces, ace king is still worth, let's say. And based on that, I can choose then the sizing that makes sense with this region. And then I can use it also for my value, let's say. To just wrap more value. But yeah, it's pretty hard to find bluffs here for population. Very hard because yeah, that's why I like the term barrel exploitively. It gives you the opportunity to bluff in situations where like the normal guy doesn't find the bluffs. So I like it. Your hand would be a hand that would make sense to go into the bigger sizings. And you would like to have some shoves with hands like sets, and you have some 7-5 suited, some 10-7 suited, so you could have also shoves. So either shove or like 3/4, but I like the smaller size a bit better. Open call, okay. Very good flop for you. So you have like a straight advantage, you have 2 pair advantage here. You should have 8-7 off. He shouldn't have 8-7 off. You have 6-4 suited. He maybe has it like low frequency or something like this, but yeah, he's tight, so he doesn't have it. So here comes also the thing of understanding ranges, or like how ranges kind of not memorize your strategies, but also understand how the strategy changes based on the different ranges, let's say. For example, there's players that have 6-4 here and players that don't have 6-4, and then just knowing how this shifts your strategy is, I think, important. Yeah, now we play pretty face up. So for example, now we make up the thing. So we bet big on the flop, which I don't like, to be honest. I miss this sizing. We want to play like higher frequency bets and then like a medium sizing that you can still bet your 7x, your 7x, weaker 8x, even some 6s. Of like, for example, you have a 6-6. You want to bet sometimes and deny equity, and it's also easier for villain to do mistakes versus the smaller sizing. So versus 1/3, for example, villain needs to defend even hands like queen jack without backdoor hearts some of the time. So the defense gets trickier for him. I like the smaller bet better. I don't like the big bet. And turn, yeah, we are making up things with the sizing. So villain could really like find out what we're doing and attack us, but they mostly don't do it. There's 2.5, there's not a call, the ace 9 off. So you're defending too wide versus bigger, like this ace x versus bigger sizings. And you're overfolding suited connectors, off-suited connectors versus smaller sizings. That's interesting. River. You check call, turn check check, and river you block. Theoretically, I think we should have some small bet with the weaker ace x, like ace 7, ace 8 and weaker, I think, goes into the block. And then if we have, or ace 8 is the close one, I think. And then you have, like, let's say from ace 10 and higher, like ace jack, ace queen, we have a 3/4 or even higher, because, or we split to like 1/3 and overbet, and then we make the split at ace 10, yes, something like this. And blocking the full house makes a lot of sense, I think, because if we overbet and villain has, like, I don't know, like ace jack, ace 10 here, then yeah, we don't get the maximum value, of course, we just get a call. And also when we overbet, villain will not start to bluff raise us. So by blocking, we let villain raise his, like, stronger ace x for value, like ace jack plus, or even ace 10, because also population is not protecting the block sizing as well. So I like to be at that he's here tricky, and he's thinking a bit out of the box and trying to set kind of a trap for him to, that villain is raising, and then he can re-raise and extract more value like this. Also, he has perceived enough bluffs still in this line. So, like, if villain doesn't believe the story of him being able to block nutted hands here, everything that follows will like, as long there is some natural bluffs still possible, villain will come to the conclusion that it's too bluff heavy. And also, people don't like to be outplayed, let's say, and it looks a bit like this outplay type of line, where villain will call himself, like, level himself into a call with something like ace jack, ace 10 too frequently. So I like his line alone lot. Sizing not so much. I don't think that the all-in sizing is the best sizing to get this call from ace jack, ace 10. I think something like 38, something like this. Like to see a range bet. This is made up. This big sizing there because he has the back door and everything. Like this, I don't like at all to see. Just range bet. If you have specific exploitative reason to do something, yes, then it's fine. But this looks like just play, like looking at his hand and kind of choosing the sizing that makes sense. Yeah, here also, I would like to know if the player is playing a full range check or like mixing, because I would like to range check here or range bet, but this board is a range check board. Range betting on this board would lose way too much EV. Villain has too many two pairs. He has another advantage. He hits this board quite well. So our hands like king queen, king jack, queen jack, they really like to check big. And also hands like aces, kings really don't mind checking big. They're not comfortable stacking off here on the type of board. And he had sixes, okay. Okay, 7-8 here. Very fast check. On the turn, we want to again like simplify our life and normally use one sizing on the turn. Try to pick a sizing where our strongest hands don't lose too much value and where our weakest hands that we want to still value bet are not a kind of value cutting themselves or something. So like, for example, if I bet here 1/4 or like 10%, then my jack 9 would lose quite a lot of EV. But if I bet like around half pot, then my 8x, my 10x, this type of hands, they can still comfortably bet. Then my equity and my jack 9 is not suffering so much, let's say. So in theory, probably, if we want to play a kind of balanced approach versus a good player, I would pick one sizing, and I would pick around like half pot here or 2/3, something like this. And versus versus like a weaker players, then I want to split my range here and go for a small and a big sizing, because weaker players, they will not raise enough on the turn, they will mess up the flop range already. So you can kind of do whatever you want, whatever you think is makes sense exploitively. No, I don't like the check. Doesn't make much sense to check. Villain doesn't have much incentive now to bluff. Maybe some flush draws. That he can have some flush draws and some jack eggs. So something like king jack, queen jack type hands, ace jack. He could bluff. Ace jack probably would be too passive and check back, but he should bluff here very aggressively. Yeah, I would like just a block bet myself here. When we checked, we cannot really, because if we check, there should be the intention of villain having this jack eggs and the flush draws that he could over bluff, and then I want to always check call. Him now tanking and looking and like thinking about check calling tells me that it was not an exploit to check the 7-8. It was actually just thinking that it's not good enough to bet anymore. So, and it's just it's a block bet then. Just a block bet. Okay, nice. So I like the call then. Probably maybe it was his intention, so not 100% sure. Thank you for watching. Make sure to watch the first part of the footage review next, where I cover 18 mistakes that you need to avoid if you want to get out of low stakes as soon as possible.